Jay here, Stretford, Paddock, and this is a special video looking at Manchester United's new structure. We've had a structural overhaul, like a broken bridge, you could say, with lots of people coming and going from the backroom staff, and of course, at the very top of the pyramid as well. So we're going to get into that. We're going to look at just exactly what has happened at Old Trafford, who's come in, who's left, and how Old Trafford now looks, how United now look with this new sort of management team in place. Now, the latest news, the latest face through the Old Trafford door is Andy O'Boyle. Now, I don't know if you know a lot about Andy O'Boyle. I certainly didn't until recently. He was at the Premier League. He's been at places like Liverpool, Coventry, and he's coming in as Deputy Director of Football. I think that's his, yes, that is his official title, actually. Deputy Football Director. Let me get that one right. Yep. So he's joining the team there to help out with the backroom staff, to help out with the overseeing of the first team, helping Erik ten Hag, all that kind of stuff. Now, he's leaving his job as head of elite performance at the Premier League. So he's a football person, which is what you want to see. Now, he has been at Manchester United before. He was a coach in the academy. I think it was about 16 years ago. He helped develop young players when they were very young. The likes of Marcus Rashford was sort of coached by Andy O'Boyle. So he's coming back to Old Trafford. It's a place he knows. He's bringing that football knowledge, and he's also bringing that experience as well, being at different clubs and being part of the elite performance team at the Premier League. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend, oh, you know what, this is amazing, the fact that Andy O'Boyle's got a person that I never even heard of until recently. But it does seem like Manchester United are doing some more grown-up thinking. We're having proper footballing people put in the place of footballing roles. So this marks a little bit of a structural revolution, as James Ducker from The Telegraph has called it. Now, he's done a bit of a deep dive into this. He's looked at what has gone on at Old Trafford since February. Since Ed Woodward left and Richard Arnold took over, James Ducker's looked at that and seen just about the changes have gone on and how it now looks. And for me, it seems like these are positive moves. In his article in The Telegraph, Ducker says that Richard Arnold has driven a strategic review and overhaul of the whole club. So it's not just the coaching staff. We know we've had a change in manager. Ralph Rangnick's gone out, of course. Erik ten Hag's come in. Erik ten Hag's brought in Mitchell van der Gaag. He's brought in Steve McLaren. He's got his own coaching staff in place there. We know that obviously Ralph Rangnick is no longer going to be a consultant, so he's gone completely. Whether that was Erik ten Hag's decision, Ralph Rangnick's, even Richard Arnold's, we don't know. We also know that we've got John Murtagh as... I need to get this one right in here. John Murtagh is Director of Football, I think he's right. And you've got Darren Fletcher, who's Technical Director, if I'm getting that the right way around. Now, in Ducker's article, he says on Murtagh, he's been in the dressing room to challenge the players over unacceptable standards when others would not this season. And last month, he oversaw the departures of long-standing senior scouts, Jim Lawler and Marcel Bou. Is it Bou or Bout? How do you say that? I don't know. I feel like that T is silent because it's Marcel sounds French. So you think a lot of the time the T is silent. I don't know. Get involved in the comments. Let me know. I need to know these things. So he's obviously not afraid to make changes to get rid of people that have been there for a long time. It's also said here in the article that Murtagh spent a lot of time in recent weeks travelling around Europe, meeting counterparts at rival clubs. The anticipated appointment of a head of women's football this summer will further lighten his load. So he's been meeting his contemporaries. He's been meeting people that do his job overseas, which kind of makes sense. You want him to get a grasp of things. This goes on a lot with coaches. I know he's director of football, but a lot of coaches travel around. They see different coaching techniques. They visit different training grounds. There's a sort of camaraderie, shall we say, amongst clubs where they'll let different coaches come and visit and see their coaching techniques, their training techniques, their facilities and that sort of thing. So if that's going on at a little bit of a high level, it kind of makes sense. And it certainly feels like these are positive moves anyway, that you're learning more, you're seeing how other clubs operate, hopefully successful clubs, otherwise what's the point? And learning from them. It says as well here in the article that the power base now flows through United's training ground. That's the base where it is, that the power flows through there. He says where Murtagh has sort of set up his office, his close proximity to the manager and the recruitment staff. And that's considered a vital bridge that ends the disconnect that existed between, or previously I should say, when Woodward held sway over footballing matters and would only spend around 20% of his time at Carrington, according to the article. So yeah, we've heard this, haven't we? We've heard a lot of the decisions were made in Mayfair. There's an office down there. A lot of meetings took place there, but now it seems everyone's sort of put together in Carrington. So you've got the manager, you've got the director of football, you've got the coaches, you've got all the scouting staff, all within a close proximity. That helps, I think. I don't want us to keep going, oh, this is great, or this is positive, or this is wonderful. But it does seem to make sense to have your sort of management team within a proximity where they can communicate. I know you can always pick up a phone, you can always via Zoom, whatever, but it's a lot better if you can have face-to-face meetings, you can have face-to-face discussions whenever you need them. And if also someone comes to visit, you're all there as well. I think that makes a lot of sense. Moving on to Darren Fletcher, because Darren Fletcher was someone that people were a bit confused about his role. There was talk that Ralph Rangnick was confused about Darren Fletcher's role, which is a bit disconcerting when you've got a manager who doesn't know what the technical director's actual role is, what he's meant to be doing. It seems that's been clarified now, and it's been more defined. The article goes on to say that after a season which he was tasked with providing emergency assistance to an interim manager, Ralph Rangnick, who had been unable to appoint the backroom staff he wanted, that now Darren Fletcher's role is going to be more defined. It also goes on to say that United feel the appointment of Dominic Jordan as Director of Data Science last October will help modernise their approach even. Laura and Bout's exits have allowed United to streamline scouting operations, and Mercer is looking at making additions to the recruitment team, and he's made that an area of sharp focus. So it looks like there's a new scouting team even getting put in place. A lot more modern thinking. You look at people like Dominic Jordan, you look at things like data science. That does sound like a little bit of a more modern approach. Now, I don't want to criticise the previous scouts. I don't know a lot about them. I know they've been there a little while, but I do feel that with United's recruitment, it seems very rare we've found a gem post Fergie. When can you look at Manchester United and go, "Oh, never heard of him," or "Didn't know a lot about that player, but he's done well at United, hasn't he?" I can't think of one. I think all our most successful signings, and there hasn't been many post-Fergie, have been players you know and you know well. I think you could argue Ander Herrera was a successful signing. We chased him for a little while. He was known from his time at Atletico Bilbao. You look at Juan Mata, extremely well known, Champions League winner, player who was at Chelsea. There wasn't a lot of scouting that went on there. Everyone knew what Mata was, and we made him a record signing at the time. Paul Pogba, you could argue whether that one was successful. Someone say it wasn't. Someone say he was one of our better players. But again, there's not much sort of recruitment or scouting that's gone on there. You've literally looked at a player that used to be United that's gone to Juve and won a load of trophies, and now you're bringing him back. I'm struggling to find one. Even sort of the more successful ones recently, you could argue Bruno's a successful signing. I know he's got his critics, but again, he was sought after. He was linked with Liverpool. He's linked with Tottenham. He'd had a very, very good season at Sporting, so people knew who he was. Now, I'm not saying you always have to get players that are relatively unknown. I'm not saying that at all. Facundo Palestri's unknown. Amad Diallo barely played any first-team football in his life. I just think that a lot of our scouting and recruitment, it does seem to be fairly obvious players that we've gone for. Harry Maguire, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, those types of signings, Nemanja Matic, you've got to go a little bit further back, Romelu Lukaku. It's very rare we get someone and you go, okay, let's see how this works out. Dan James was one perhaps, but again, he was quite well known in the Championship when he played very well against Manchester City in the FA Cup. Leeds wanted him just before we got him, and people go, well, that was a snip, that was a bargain. Leeds were going to buy him for 4.5 million. We bought him a few months later for 12 million. I know we got a profit on that. We sold him for 30 million, I think, in the end, but he's not quite the unknown gem. And I just feel like maybe that's, with this new recruitment, we can find, not unknown, because I think most players are known now. Maybe that's the wrong word, but find players that aren't the most obvious ones, that aren't always just the big money signing from a Premier League club or the signing that everyone's after. Maybe now and again we can look a little bit differently. Maybe we've got to. If you look at the budget we've got, look at the amount of players we need to bring in, maybe this sort of change in recruitment and change in scouting can help us find those 20 to 30 million pound players that sometimes you need. Pains me to say it, but you look at Liverpool, and I don't like doing this, unless it's laughing when they've just lost the Champions League final. But now and again, I know they spend big money. They're not afraid to spend big money on the likes of Alisson Becker or Virgil van Dijk, of course, but they can get players relatively cheap. Andy Robertson was a good example. I think they paid about 8 million quid for him. That's a good scouting now. That's good sort of recruitment. When you can get these players and you can buy players for, I know 8 million is probably a one-off, but when you can buy players for sort of 20, 30 million, you can buy more of them. And if you need to bring in 5 or 6 players and you're bringing in players for 30, 40 million, then that's doable over a couple of transfer windows. If your signings are 60, 70, 80 million, then you're only going to be able to bring in 3 or 4, aren't you? over however many transfer windows. So it does seem like these are positive moves. It also goes on to say in the article that Simon Wells, Mick Court and Jose Mayorga are the senior scouts, and the setup is coordinated by Steve Brown, the head of recruitment operations, who does not give an opinion on players but seeks to ensure that there is a robust process. I love all my processes to be robust, and that targets are watched in an array of different contexts by mutual eyeballs. So I like that. Everyone's having a look, everyone's giving a different opinion. So you might have someone there, I'm guessing, I don't know, I'm saying, someone's going to be just focusing on, I don't know, the sort of the fitness levels this player may have. How, how's he performing over the course of a game in the 90 minutes? His productivity, is he influencing the game? That sort of thing. All sorts of different facets may be looked at by different eyeballs, so you're getting different opinions. So it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense to me. Ten Hag has met the recruitment staff and fed him what he wants. Murtai is there to provide challenge, and only when he and the manager are ultimately aligned will deals be progressed further. A player cannot be signed without the backing of both parties. Now that slightly worries me, only slightly, but I don't know a lot about John Murtai. I do know a lot about Erik ten Hag. Not loads, but I know enough. And I do think Erik ten Hag knows his stuff, and I have confidence in him. And I feel like Erik ten Hag, if he wants a player, we should be getting him. And I'd be a little bit disappointed if Erik ten Hag wanted a player and John Murtai didn't, and we didn't get him because of that. That, to me, is a little bit worrying. I suppose you've got to put your faith in John Murtai. It's just, how qualified is he to make these decisions? Is he the right man to get these deals and to be able to say to Erik, no, that's not a player you should be getting, or this is one? Well, time will tell. But there's obviously a lot of faith in him there. And listen, I said it a few times, this is the summer where we'll see what he's made of. When he came in, there was a lot of rejoicing almost. Oh, yeah, we're going to have this new setup and it's all going to be great. But I think you have to prove that in transfer windows. And we haven't done it so far. This is the transfer window to do it. It says Murtai is taking on the responsibility of handling the higher profile or more sensitive negotiations, assisted by Brown and the club's finance and legal teams. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think you can delegate that sort of stuff to people who know what they're doing. It goes on as well. There's a further bit in the article that says around £5 million is being spent this summer installing new pitches and freshening up the facilities at Carrington. When Carrington was built about, 20 years ago, whatever it was state of the art. It isn't anymore. It's not. It's gone from modern to almost vintage. So I think we need a revamp at least, and that's what this £5 million investment, which is pennies when you think about it. This is one of the most important parts of your football club, the training facilities. Spending £5 million, which for a club like Manchester United, the amount of money we spend, not to mention the amount of money that's taken out by the Glazers, this is peanuts, and it makes it makes sense to do that, including the pool area and the gym. Following work, during the season on a new restaurant, dining area and improved catering facilities. Yeah, there was this story as well on there. I don't know if it covers it here as well, but there was a mention of Cristiano Ronaldo being unhappy about the state of the pool, and he couldn't believe that the pool was sort of falling apart since he's last been here. It looked like the same tiles and everything, and I think there's a story that he refused to go in it. So I'm not going in that. It's like when you never go on holiday and you see the brochure. It's got the pool, it's got those pictures, and it just looks amazing done in a wall. Looks all crisp and it's all blue and it's all gleaming around and all the tiles look immaculate. And you think, oh yeah, you get there and it's just like a glorified bath and it's all dirty and it's minging and all the tiles are cracked. Do you know what I mean? You ever had that when you go on holiday and that? No? All right, fair enough. Anyway, insiders say Arnold and Murtai wants to create an environment where people are encouraged, is that a word? Encouraged to challenge again. Yeah, bit of challenging. But they in turn will need to be free to operate without one hand being tied behind their back. So you can challenge me, but not too much. Do you know what I mean? We'll do the challenging. You'll just be the challenged. We'll see how that goes. Listen, there's nothing wrong with having discussions and arguments and debates if it's for the greater good and if it gets you to the goal, ultimately, of being a successful football club. It also goes on to say, this is in the article here as well, United's problems have extended far beyond the football pitch. I think we know that, don't we? But the article goes into it. It says, from micromanagement by the owning Glazer family. Yep. We always hear these stories, don't we? Joe Glazer doesn't like this player. Joe Glazer likes this player. This player is rumoured to be a favourite of Joe Glazer. Joe Glazer knows nothing about football. Literally. His opinion should be ignored because it's irrelevant. So he should just leave the footballing matters up to footballing people and focus on doing something else, which is hopefully selling Manchester United to someone who gives a toss about us. So it goes on to say that calamitous recruitment and poor leadership, a failing structure has accelerated the decline, raised huge questions about how the club is run and the people who run it. Yeah, you can see what has gone on at Manchester United post Sir Alex Ferguson. And this goes on to say this is the first time since post-Fergie that there are signs of meaningful changes behind the scenes, because we know it's been a bit of a horror show, hasn't it? Do you remember that first transfer window when Fergie had left? Because you had Woodward came in, he took over from David Gill. David Moyes comes in, he takes over from Sir Alex Ferguson. Now that window for me is the most important window. You're the reigning champions. You've still got a very good squad, but you've got certain players that are getting on a bit. There's areas that need strengthening, particularly midfield. That's the one that sort of everyone agreed we need to buy another midfielder. You get that right, and you don't let the likes of City and Liverpool and all these other clubs and Chelsea steal a match on you, because you're still the reigning champions. You're still arguably the strongest squad or the strongest team in the country. But we didn't. Our players declined. We didn't replace them. In that window, we didn't get it right. We bought Marouane Fellaini for, I think, a little bit more than his buyout clause because we left it late. Nothing wrong with Fellaini. I actually think he did a decent job for Manchester United. But he wasn't enough. You didn't just need Marouane Fellaini and that's it. We're going to keep City at bay and Liverpool at bay and we're going to stay at the top of the tree. Not going to happen. There was also the shenanigans that went on, trying to get Ander Herrera, people that weren't even associated with Manchester United apparently negotiating that, trying to get Sami Khedira, getting laughed out about that, trying to get Fabio Contrao at 10:30 at night, and Real Madrid saying, well, no, because then we can't replace him because the window shuts in 25 minutes or whatever. It was a shambles, and we never quite got it right in the transfer windows. Even when it felt like we were moving forward, there seemed to be a bit of confusion. Even like under Van Gaal, when we started buying all these players, did he want some of them? Did he know what to do with them? We had Di Maria up front and Wayne Rooney in midfield at one point. I know Rooney wasn't a signing, but when you had Ander Herrera on the bench as well that was a signing, it was very confusing. The same moving forward with Jose Mourinho. Fred, one of his last ever signings, he barely got a look in under Jose. Why? Did he want him? I don't think so. Very confusing. It also talks about there's a bit of a survivor culture, or there was a survivor culture at the club. It said it's harder to get out of the club than it is to get in. Said one exasperated, I love that word, exasperated, senior source when discussing the so-called survivor culture that has taken root. How can that be right at Manchester United? It's worrying. There's two, it goes on to say, the article as well, there's two principal aspects to this, and both point to a chronic failure of leadership at the top that allowed what former striker Zlatan Ibrahimovic decried as a small, closed mentality to permeate a club that has struggled to modernise in the 9 years since Ferguson's seismic departure. The thing was, Ferguson ran the club almost like an autocrat. He oversaw everything. He knew everything. That's not modern football. That's not how modern football teams or clubs are run. And it worked for Manchester United. We were completely successful under Sir Alex Ferguson to ridiculous levels. So you can't question that. That was what we needed at the time, and that was what worked at the time. And we had the man, the genius of Sir Alex, to do it the right way at that time. Once he left, there should have been a change. There should have been a more modern approach, and we didn't do that. And it seemed we didn't have even a joined-up approach or a sensible approach. We had one that was just chaotic. And this article sort of it alludes to that. It goes on to say the other sort of principal aspect that I mentioned was the failure of leadership. The other one centres around some, but by no means all of the legacy staff who are set in their ways and think all the old rules still apply at the club that was once the best, but has just finished 35 points behind Manchester City. So you've got people from the old sort of school who were set in their ways, and you've got new people. The other, much more corrosive, revolves around what sources have described as the fear of speaking up. So those who have been prepared to stick their head above the parapet have too often found themselves shot down, sidelined, or worse still, ignored. Over time, it has encouraged a culture of silence, obedience, and disillusionment, according to insiders. It just sounds horrible, doesn't it? It really does sound terrible what has been going on at Manchester United. The whole place sounds toxic. And we've seen that. We've seen that with results. The results have been poor. We've gone now, 5 years without a trophy. You have to wonder why. And this sort of alludes to, or this tells you one of the reasons why, is because behind the scenes it's just been terrible. It goes on to say there's been a Corn Ferry review. So this this review is sort of these people who've come in and given a review of what's gone on. It says, the irony is that United's drive for long-term change is being spearheaded at a football and executive level by two people whose critics would argue were part of that survivor culture, or at least synonymous with the previous failed regime. Goes on to say whether Chief Executive Richard Arnold and Football Director John Murtagh prove successful or not, though neither have given the impression of being happy to sit back and maintain the status quo. Since taking over as Chief Executive from Ed Woodward, Arnold has driven a strategic review and overhaul of the whole club, and this was described as felt like a hurricane coming in, one source said. It's understand internationally renowned organisational consulting giants Korn Ferry have been enlisted to lead an aggressive headhunting process designed to identify and recruit best-in-class talent through interviews by Korn Ferry's specialist consultants as they seek to establish where new skills and change are needed. It then speaks about Richard Arnold. So we've got this review going on, these international renowned specialists and all this headhunting going on. Richard Arnold now, Ed Woodward, obviously, his era, if you can call it that, wasn't a success. Yes, we won some trophies, but ultimately we've fallen to a point where we're 35 points behind our rivals. We've gone 5 years without a trophy, and we've wasted about 1.3 billion quid or whatever it is on transfers that haven't won us a trophy. That haven't won us a title or a Champions League. In fact, we're not even in the Champions League. That's how great those signings have been. So Michel Platini, it says in the article, was once asked how many people worked at UEFA, and the droll reply from the former president of European football's governing body was about 50%. So he's saying half the people don't work. And it says Platini's remarks will resonate with Summit United, where staff numbers have ballooned to 1,214, approaching double the figure from a decade ago. And there have been complaints about departments being top-heavy or too multi-layered and bureaucratic to be fit for purpose. So it's saying there that you've just got a lot of people and no one knows what they're doing. We've doubled the staff, but not the output, perhaps. So it goes on to say about Arnold, he's a fiercely demanding individual with no interest in the spotlight. His friend and predecessor, Woodward, seemed to enjoy. Ed Woodward was quite a public figure. I know he stopped doing interviews after a while, but he did a lot when he was early doors and was obviously, sort of lambasted for some of the, or lampooned, is that the right word? Whatever. Mocked for some of the statements he said about, we can do things in the transfer market that others can only dream of and all that. Arnold was thought to be reticent at first about the chief executive's role amid doubts he would have the autonomy to make a real difference. But Arnold, who joined United in 2007, initially as commercial director before becoming group managing director, is said to be hell-bent on ensuring that United, first and foremost, even have a best-in-class culture. Makes a lot of sense. And then it goes on about Murtagh. Although Murtagh was appointed football director for 15 months ago, not long after turning down a strategic role with David Beckham's Inter Miami in the US, and he led the search for Ten Hag, his power base only truly began to widen once Woodward exited in January and Edward gave him autonomy over footballing operations. He's described as United's fixer by Woodward. Murtagh, who joined the club 6 months after Ferguson's retirement in May 2013, is aware of the accusations levelled at him principally that he's an able administrator but not a sporting director with the skill set and expertise to overhaul recruitment and a catalogue of failures in the transfer market. So there's some question marks about that. But then it goes on to say that he's affable and approachable. Murtagh is not someone that shouts and screams. And a source close to Murtagh said he doesn't want to be sat there in a few years thinking about the things he should have done and didn't. Listen, big changes, big overhaul. We've got a new manager. We've got new coaches. We've got a new chief exec, who came in a few months ago. We've now got a new deputy football director. So behind the scenes is changing at Manchester United. We just need things to change on the pitch. That's where we want to see real changes. We want to see us winning football matches, challenging for the top honours, and not watching teams like City and Liverpool finish 35 and 34 points or whatever above us, because it's unacceptable. I know this isn't going to happen overnight, and these seem like positive changes. Erik Ten Hag's going to need a little bit of patience. He's going to need the right backing in the transfer market. And he's going to need people to give him the tools to do the job that he's been brought in to do. Hopefully that's what's going to happen with all these changes, but time will tell. Anyway, that's been a bit of a roundup and a bit of an analysis of the James Ducker article. Get involved in the comments and let us know what you think about the moves that have been going on at Old Trafford. Are you optimistic? Are you just unimpressed? Or are you waiting to see, like myself, a little bit patient and waiting to see what happens, because we can judge how effective these changes are by the results on the football pitch. I've been Motty. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.